A warm welcome to Skye, Eddy. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Game Changer podcast.
Oh, absolutely, Belinda. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Cool. Hey, we are going to jump straight in. We like to ask our guest the same first question. We are the Game Changing podcast. So we'd like to ask our guest, what has been, or can you share a moment or a person who has been a game changer in your life and explain how or why they changed?
For sure. Wow, there's so many little moments that come to mind. I think I'll land on a person, and that would be Tony DeCicco. So Tony was the coach of the U.S. women's national team. He coached the 99ers, the team that is such a storied history in shaping just a trajectory of women's sports in America and even globally. Tony was the coach of that team. He passed away a handful of years ago now, sadly, but his memory really lives strong. I was lucky enough to work for him for many years as a director of his camps, his Soccer Plus camps, and yeah, the moment I met Tony, I knew that I was in the presence of something really special, and that actually speaks a lot about what I learned from him because it wasn't necessarily him as much as it was the community that he created around him. And so for me, working for Soccer Plus Camps was a tremendous privilege. My friends, the other directors and coaches and staff members and campers are still people that I keep in touch with today. And Tony did such a phenomenal job of community and establishing community and setting standards and processes and connection points that were so important. And that really lives on in the work that I'm doing now in establishing community. That's front and center in the work that I'm doing at Soccer Parenting, establishing community at youth sporting clubs.
Cool. Thank you. Skye, for our listeners, are you able to just explain? I mean, you've had a fascinating journey with sports and coaching. Are you able to just give us a bit of an overview?
Sure, sure. Well, I was born in 1971, so in the United States, that means that I was born the year Title IX was passed. And Title IX for us is a significant legislation which equals sporting experiences in many ways. It's essentially legislation around public systems in America have to provide equally to boys and girls. And so I was fortunate to grow up with a lot of sporting opportunities, also because I grew up in a very progressive area in Northern Virginia. So I was always an athlete and would identify, fortunately grew up in a place where free play just was rampant. So many kids in my neighborhood, and we lived literally, my backyard was a park with baseball, soccer, basketball, a swimming pool. So I just had so many opportunities to just interact with being active. And yeah, so I grew up playing soccer was the sport of choice for me. I was always a goalkeeper from the very beginning and played for our youth national teams as a youth All-American. Our national team structure wasn't as advanced as it is now, certainly, but I was on the paper teams that we had for that. And then I went on to play collegiately and played professionally briefly in Italy for Tavinaco Femminile and Udine. So I had an amazing playing experience. I was really grateful for that. But I've always been a coach too. Since even in high school, I was coaching goalkeepers, and it's always been a passion of mine. So I am a licensed coach in the United States. I'm a coach educator for U.S. Soccer. I teach the grassroots courses. And I consider myself to be a player, a coach, and obviously in the work that I'm doing right now, the parenting work that I'm doing for my children and to support other parents is pretty central theme.
I was listening to one of your podcasts or an interview that you did earlier, and the experiences that you had in Italy seem so you were there for about 4 or 5 months. Are you able to just share a bit of
Yeah.
it? Just sounds crazy, and it sounds you were so brave to go off and do that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I I always wanted to play professionally. And, if I graduated from college now, I was a first team All-American in college. I was MVP of the Final Four. So, I had a great college career. And if I were to graduate from college now, I would, go and have a long professional career and, in the United States. But we definitely didn't have a league in the US. Right after college, I had signed a contract to go play in Sweden, and that fell through at the last minute. I got a job. I had a great job I loved, but I always wanted to play. And I had this dream of coming back to the national team. This is as the 99 World Cup was coming around. And so I sold everything and hopped on a plane and landed in the northeast of Italy in Udine. And it was such an amazing experience. It only lasted 4 or 5 months. Never quite got the visa that I needed, but I will say this moment and this time, I actually could have answered your first question with Italy as well, like a game-changing moment for me, because it really just helped me realize how important soccer, football was to me, and what a connection it was for us to the world. And it was really through this experience that I came home really dedicated to keeping this connection to the game really alive for me and for others as well. I want families to understand and parents to understand the gift of sport for children, and especially football being such a global sport, how it really can connect people to the world. So in Italy, I lived in a hotel with all the Udinese players. So the team was Tavignaco, but it was in Udine. We had the same sponsor, the hotel. So all the men who were on trial for the Serie A team or who hadn't found housing lived in the hotel with me. We had all of our meals together. I became like the sister of everyone. I had no money. I had nothing. I was had a bicycle that the brakes didn't work on it. And these guys are driving around in like brand new, Mercedes. They'd pick me up from practice, stick the bike in the back of their car. Like it was such an incredible experience. And then the hotel became the away hotel. So when AC Milan came in to play, everyone would leave the hotel except for me up in room 402. And then AC Milan would be in the hotel. They'd make me go in the back stairs and sneak up the hallway and stuff. I literally wish that I had taken better notes because it would be a really great book.
And I was listening, as I say, to one of your interviews, and you were saying that you had no money and you were just kind of living day to day, and your teammates were buying you coffees, and you'd be sitting there just waiting. I think that's what I mean by being brave. You just got on
Yeah.
a plane, this foreign, you know,
Yeah.
country, and
That really speaks so much to me though. Like that is always what I've, loved about sport and my experiences. Like to be an athlete, we also have to be brave. We have to take chances. We have to take risks. We have to put ourselves out there. So it's really kind of those same lessons played out. Plus, I was a goalkeeper, so everything's a little weird for me.
Skye, can you take us back to the beginning? So, what inspired you to start soccer parenting?
So I founded Soccer Parenting when my daughter Callie was coming up in the game. Callie's now 24 and thriving. She works in MLS for the Columbus Crew as their manager of youth programming. So she's still very involved in the game. But Callie was 11 or 12, and I became acutely aware of the fact that if I had a more productive relationship with her coach, that would be in the best interest of her player development. And as a coach for a long time in the youth game, I was obviously really aware of the nuance and the stress that often exists in the coach-parent relationship. So I was seeing it now really from multiple angles. I understood the coach in wanting to put distance and sort of that feedback that we get as coaches of don't connect with the parents or, keep your distance. Yet now I'm on the parent side and could really see something differently. So I really decided to address the coach-parent relationship in a tangible way. And of course, that started with engaging parents and resourcing parents around best practices for being a sports parent. I feel like we've spent a lot of time blaming parents as coaches, as club leaders, or just giving parents a hard time about the way they're showing up. And yet, what we know now is that a lot of those problems are created because of the lack of engagement. And so, if we simply engage parents as club leaders, as coaches, then what will happen is that parents will show up in a much more productive way to facilitate, as I mentioned earlier, player development.
So what were the biggest pain points or problems that you saw for parents in youth soccer when you began this work?
Yeah, I mean, it was probably the pain points that I was feeling. So I thought, as a former professional athlete, as an active coach, coaching at high levels of the game, lots of experiences in the youth game, also collegiately with our national team programs, like I thought that with all of these experiences, plus, Belinda, I felt like I'm a really good parent. You know, I was really shocked how difficult it was for me to support the sporting experience of my daughter. I had a lot of stress. I had a lot of anxiety. I didn't know how to show up and support her in a way that would help her because Callie and I are much different from a mental standpoint. And so what I thought would work for me was not working for her, and I was at a loss. So I think one of these major pain points is that we don't know how to support our children who are in an environment that is often stressful or, you know, has a lot of demands on them or is an environment and we're trying to support them with a dream they have or a goal they have, and we're not showing up like we think is best for our child, and we don't really know where to go for resources, and we don't have that education and the guidance. So that's certainly a pain point. I think another big pain point for parents is the lack of connection with a coach, and is that that lack of oftentimes trust with the coach, because this barrier and this wall has been put up with sort of this preemptive statement about the lack of connection, the lack of clarity around boundaries. All of those things are things that we're trying to address now, but certainly were pain points for me, and I think are for other parents as well.
And this next question, one very much for me. From your perspective, what should the parent's role be in, supporting their child's journey in sport?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, it should be supportive in nature. I think as a parent, we need to be an observer, a supporter, showing up however we can. I also think that as a parent, and this will be certainly a theme of this podcast, I imagine over again, is we need to be curious and we need to seek education. I think there has not been enough education out there when it comes to supporting parents, and so we need to seek guidance if our children are in these sporting experiences, especially those with what we say kids with big dreams. As parents, it's our job to help facilitate that in a very low key, behind the scenes way, just making sure our children are being supported, coached by in environments that are conducive to their being able to reach their potential.
So I imagine that you sit on some boards over there, and are you now seeing change? I mean, obviously, I'm assuming the boards that you're sitting on, you are seeing change, but with all the work that you've been doing, yeah, are you
Yeah,
see that change?
absolutely. I'm seeing change. I feel really optimistic. I was on a call earlier, and the end of the call, they gave like a 5 question little survey. And one of them was about sort of your level of optimism about the sporting environment today. And I'm feeling very optimistic. When I founded Soccer Parenting, oh, everyone thought I was crazy. And, what are you doing? Like, I don't understand. Or, okay, you go take care of the parents. Thank you. It's sort of, there was this very sort of callous and just everyone sort of was kind of making fun of what I was doing, to be fair. And now there's this beautiful curiosity around parent engagement, and we're starting to understand the true value that parents have, and the role that they play as a really formidable stakeholder in the youth sporting environment of children. I was in Australia last year, speaking in New South Wales for the New South Wales FA, and the response that I had to my presentation, to the education that I did. I was there for almost a whole week doing different workshops. It was phenomenal. And so, yeah, we're seeing a really important transformation, and the inbound interest that I have right now from federations, from leagues globally, from other sporting organizations and NGBs and other sports, is really a demonstration of yes, things are changing, things are shifting. There is some definite momentum around the role of the parent and how important the parent is to helping kids live healthy lives and have healthy interactions with sports, regardless of where they end up, or even really regardless of what those kids dream. You know, we just need kids being active and learning those, you know, life lessons that are so uniquely reserved to a sporting experience.
You know, you talked about when you grew up, your backyard, you know, you had the all sorts of games and you just were being a kid. Nowadays, I mean, both Ben and I are teachers, and a lot of the kids that we teach don't have those opportunities at home to be a kid. You know, when I grew up, we were out in the country and we were just making huts in the bush, or we were playing cricket or soccer or what have you.
Or cricket, soccer mixed together because
Oh,
you were just
yeah,
out there having fun.
absolutely. And you know, you had to be called home to have dinner type thing, and your parents just knew you were at the park. But sadly, a lot of the kids that we are teaching, you know, they come to school and we're the ones who are, you know, getting them into sports and things like that. And it's not just, I mean, there's just so much more than the sport. It's the teammate, it's the family community feel. And like I say, well, in the school that we're currently at, yeah, I mean, it's it's such a powerful thing for them. And for some of our kids who struggle academically, yeah, they just get to go out and have fun and just thrive. So yeah, a sport for both Ben and I. Yeah, it's amazing to see some of the kids who, as I say, in the classroom setting, struggle a bit, but actually out on the pitch or where have you, yeah,
Mhm.
it's
Yeah,
amazing.
there's so many layers to that because like why so the importance of having kids involved in sport is there's so many facets to that. And yeah, we grew up in this environment where it was so much free play. And you're right, like I sometimes came home well after the lights went out and my parents didn't even notice. Like, you know, like it was just we were raised in a much different environment. And so we have to understand the cultural context of how children are being raised in society right now. So things are just simply different. And so in one sense, we have many working families where both the mom and the dad are working. And so there's less support for children. And so there are less opportunities for them to play sport, unfortunately, or less opportunities for them to be active because they're just not outside as much because the parents aren't home and they have to be inside. And so there's some instances where that's the case. And then there's sort of the flip side of that, of these overprogrammed kids where they are constantly signed up for this and signed up for that and just don't have time to be home. And I remember listening to Michelle Obama speak at a Project Play event, and she said something that has always struck me. And that she was talking to other moms. They're like, well, I want to send my kids out to play, but when they go out to play, there's nobody else there. You know, everyone else is doing something else. And so there's also that overprogrammed child and struggles that we have around that. And then we have these sporting structures, which often really become a big demand. And so kids, if they get involved with a club, they kind of have to go down this long path with a club, and it's just more and more, and you kind of get sucked into all of this participation instead of being able to play multiple sports and things like that.
Yeah. This is another one for me, well, and a lot of parents, pre-car, like pre-game car rides. What should
Mhm.
parents say or not say before a match?
Yeah, so I had to do some research on this. Like, this is a place that I was totally failing for my daughter. So, my pregame I found was often waking up in the morning, making sure she had all of her food, making sure that her bag was packed, making sure that this is like if we're getting ready for a game, making sure that, and making things are stressful around the house just a little bit. I mean, I wasn't crazy, but it felt different emotionally in the house on a Saturday morning when my daughter had a game versus the Saturday morning when she didn't have a game. And so, then we would get into the car. Usually, getting into the car involved a last minute run around the house. Something happened. You don't have your water. Da 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 da. And I would be stressed about her game. And so that would play out with me emotionally losing it around something. You have to have your bag, or I can't believe you can't find your socks again, or, something crazy that was just so unnecessary, which then got us into a negative space when my daughter was nervous about this game. And then we get in the car, and I mean, I tell this story and it makes me seem like I'm a hysterically crazy soccer parent. And I make this story worse and like overplay it so that parents can relate to it. And I say this in front of parents and I get lots of head nods. So really, I just want to be clear, like I was not this out of control. However, the emotion was really real for me, and I would get in the car, Callie would be in the back seat, I would be looking in the rearview mirror. I'm thinking, is she ready? I think she's ready. What music is she listening to? Yeah, she looks like she's got a good game face on. Okay, Callie, how you doing? No, try to talk to her, do whatever. And I'm constantly like looking at her and I'm thinking, okay, don't give her that pregame talk. She does not need the pregame talk. Just get to the game. She's listening to her music. And then all of a sudden, I'm giving her a lecture. Totally out of my control, completely unplanned. And next thing you know, like I just lose it and I start giving her this little pregame talk, which she absolutely doesn't necessarily want to have. And so I did not have a good structure in place. And then I think as parents, one of the things that I work a lot with and we've really kind of dove in around is this concept of decoupling. And what I'm kind of getting at with this whole conversation is how emotionally connected we get to our children. There's a lot of reasons for that, but one of the really key things that we need to do as effective sports parents is decouple from that. We should be able to sit on the sideline and watch a game with our child and feel as though we're sitting and watching neighbors play. Like our kids aren't even there. We're just out there supporting some neighbors, watching their child play. We happen upon this game. We'll sit and watch for a little while. And like that should be the level of emotion that we're able to watch our children play. And instead, we sit on the sideline. And all of that with stress, and all of that stress kind of starts building up in the car ride. So, best practices for the car ride that I learned over time are one, let your child lead the way. But two, I think we do and are positioned uniquely as a sports parent to support our child from a mental performance standpoint. We know our kids really well. And so we know what maybe nervousness, anxiety, goals they have, all of those things. So I do think there's a moment and a space for us to interact around that. And Dan Abrahams, a sports psychologist from the UK, who I collaborate quite a bit with, does a really good talk around this, around what he calls game face and helping your child get their game face. But it's certainly not a conversation that happens in the car ride. It's a conversation that happens weeks before. Oh, like as we're kind of preparing for the season, how can I support you in the car ride? Okay, and then maybe 2 days before the game. So, what are your goals for the game? What do you want to be? Some action words, and the kids come up with action words. I want to be on my toes. I want to be alert. I want to keep working hard, whatever these action words might be. And then our job as a parent is to just remind our children of what their predetermined actions words were so that we can help them get into the game and be thinking about what their goals were for the game. So I have a little tradition with Callie. I always say the same things to her. I always text her a lot of times when she was playing in college. Obviously, I'm not at her games, so I'd always text her, but it's just have fun, be a leader, work hard. That's what I tell my daughter before every game, and it's a little tradition. And I think now, she loves hearing it. Even now she's playing in a semi-pro league, and every once in a while, just to be fun, I'll text her that as well, just as a reminder of how it was when she was growing up. But I think we can just really sit on the sideline of this, support our children, remember, remind them of goals that they have. And other than that, I think our job is to just be joyful, to just make sure our children are, realizing and remembering, and that we're realizing and remembering that, what's so beautiful about sport is the interactions that our children can have with other people, the life lessons, and that this is supposed to be fun. And so I think as parents, that's really what we can bring back. But we're not able to do that until we decouple the emotion and we go through and we do that work ourselves. And that's an essential starting space for a parent.
So for the post car ride after the match, is it the same that we let them lead the conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we're parents, so we know sometimes after a game, our child gets in the car and they're kind of chatty and they want to talk about the game and can you, remember when this happened or that referee call or whatever they might be interacting with. And so they naturally are a bit animated and full of energy around it. Or maybe they get in the car and they put their headphones on or tell us what music they want to listen to, and they just kind of want to sit in silence. Maybe they're like really hungry and that's what's important to them right then. So I definitely feel like we need to let our child lead the way, really make sure that we keep thinking about sort of the joy, that we're really optimistic and positive in those times. Even if we're disappointed or we feel like our child didn't live up to their potential, that they didn't work as hard as they should have, and we're feeling disappointed in them, that's certainly not the time to address those types of things with our child. As a parent, we can choose some real tactful times to bring things like effort, lack of leadership, lack of attention to a teammate. There might be things where we just can't draw the line and wait, like disrespect to an adult or to another person on the field. Those might need to be addressed immediately. But most everything else, I think as a parent, we need to find a tactful time to bring them up and decide if we want to bring them up to our child and if that's how we want to frame our relationship around sport with them.
Sorry. What are some great routines and habits that families can build to help student athletes thrive, not just in sport, but also school, socially?
Yeah. Um, so habits, I would say, this concept of autonomy is probably what comes to mind right away. So it is so important that our child be as my friend Todd Bean says, the protagonist of their journey, and that they are the ones that are leading when it comes to getting their homework done and making sure that their athletic bag is ready to leave for school in the morning if they need to bring a uniform or things to school. Or so I would say just a general habit of autonomy, where the children are the ones that are leading the way is probably like an essential skill of a high performing sports family. These are tricky. This is where there are mistakes. This is where kids don't bring the cleats to school and they can't train and they have to learn that lesson, or they have to train in their running shoes and get them all dirty and they get upset, but that's just the reality of forgetting your cleats. So I think those things are really important. And maybe because again, all children are different and all children learn differently and action things out differently. And while a lot of sporting children might have more of a high performance more mindset and be ready to plan and to take things on, there's lots of kids that aren't. And they really need some extra support and help. So it's finding that balance. But at the end of the day, I think we can look back on our experience of our children, or we want to look back when our kids are grown and say that sports really help them learn these lessons. And regardless of the starting space and place of each child, there's still a lot of growth and lessons that are learned, along the way. So yeah, that would be my big habit. Things that are important for parents with kids who are little are having them get their own water, carry their own bag. When I go to, sports fields and I see parents carrying the bag of the 8-year-old, I'm like, just the 8-year-old should carry the bag. Plus, as an athlete, it feels so cool to carry your bag. Like we want to give these experiences to kids. This is actually how they form identity around being an athlete or being a part of a team is the uniform and the gear. And so, having kids as simple as making them carry their own bag. And then there's little things that kids can do at home. My kids did laundry starting at around the age of 10 because they had sports and I wasn't going to do their laundry all the time. So it was very simple for them to get home, put their laundry in the washing machine, turn it on and move it to the dryer and handle that from a young age. I'm not saying I didn't help sometimes, but those are the expectations for sure.
I So a couple of months ago, I think we spoke to Wayne Goldsmith. So he's a performance coach, and he was talking about how he often does this activity with parents when he's doing a talk and says, please put your hand up if you've either washed your kids' clothes or packed the lunch or got the kids' sports gear bag ready. And he said, most parents put up their hand thinking that this is a good thing. And he said, no, it's not a good thing. You've got to be teaching them independence and things like that. And as he was talking, I was just shrinking in my chair because that is me. I am the one who's saying, Will, have you got your drink bottle? Will, is your sports bag packed? And then it's funny because as a teacher, I talk to parents and I talk about the importance of giving kids roles and responsibilities, but I wasn't doing it myself.
Mm.
And it took listening to Wayne. And I mean, I've heard other people say it, but
Yeah.
for whatever reason, it clicked. And since that talk, Will has been the one who's been packing his sports bags. And
Great.
it's just,
Yeah.
it was an interesting conversation.
Yeah. And has your son's experience, do you think, changed at all because of this new increased autonomy that he has? Do you think?
Yeah, definitely. And another thing is, so we've got a sports app, Hey, where everyone
Yeah.
that, and I was the one who was in charge of that, where I'd say yes, he was going to training, and no, he's away sick. And then after speaking to Wayne, I was like, I've got to, and so now he's got it. And
Yeah.
yes, there has been times that he has forgotten his drink bottle, and maybe once even, but now he's like, oh, I don't want to be. So, and it's also good because I'm not the one in the morning who is like feeling like I'm nagging. Have you got this? Blah, 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 blah.
Great.
But
One of the reasons I think why we get so emotionally connected to our children is because we put ourselves in these situations where we are.
yeah,
And so this whole decoupling, this is all kind of part of it, of like, this is their experience, this is their space, and we are an observer and a supporter and, need to advocate at times with them and for them. But for the most part, that's great. I'm glad you're having some success with that and that you listened, and that's sometimes like things just click, right? And also every child's different because like my son, there's like he has a limit on how many things he can really do. And yes, I guess I could have had him make his lunch the night before, and so that but our morning routine with him, like things would set him off. Like it was stressful enough as it was, like to add in something else might have been too much. Um, but, you know, I think we need to get creative as parents and understand our children and where they're coming from, and absolutely set some real ground rules as far as, you know, what our role is and what theirs is.
So have you seen any specific systems or boundaries, like, screen time, that make a big difference, or, limiting screen time, or having family meals together, or, have you?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, a lot of times you think, have a family meal. Like I'm looking at the family calendar and like there's one day in a 2 week period where we are potentially together. You know, where who knows if my child's going to have a school project or have to do something that's going to take away that day. So the idea of that seems a little daunting. Absolutely, though, I think, you know, maybe there's other times that families can spend time together and we can create different traditions around moments like that, whether that be an after game tradition where we stop by and have something together. So I think traditions for family, regardless of how they play out and come to be, are really really important. I think as parents, we can you know, be intentional about creating those different traditions, as simple as they may be. For our children. I think also in terms of like limiting things, or something I maybe was thinking of before when we were talking about like best practices around parenting. I think checklists really help. So, to your point of getting out the door and you're nagging them, one of the things we talk about at soccer parenting and sports parenting is, you know, have a checklist for getting out the door to a game. That's the checklist that everyone can reference and, you know, kind of work your way through. And that can really help. So, I think, you know, for some families, getting organized around ways like that is really helpful. For me, you know, my kids are older now. My son's 21. He's just getting ready to graduate college. My daughter's graduated, as I said, and out in the world. If I could go back and maybe change one thing I did, I think I would really have been more intentional about taking their phones away from them at around 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, or at a reasonable time. Granted, they had computers and would just be texting probably on the computer, but maybe not. But this idea of just laying in bed and being on a phone and kids doing that, I look back and I think, I wonder if I could have set better, set my kids up better when it comes to screen time. So that's something I wish I'd been more thoughtful about.
Skye, what's your advice to parents who've got children who've got these big dreams, big goals, like playing in college, or, even professionally?
Mhm. Yeah. Well, one question I get a lot is my kid is saying that they want to play professionally, but they're not really putting the time in. Like, should I tell them that's not a good goal? Because they're not. And what I've heard from sports psychologists repeatedly is no, do not be a dream crusher. Like, just if that's what your child says, then amplify that, support that, give them a high five, whatever, however you can support that dream. But it does get stressful when our kids are saying one thing, but then never going to the gym to work out. And, you know, so we don't see the alignment between their behaviors and what their aspirations are. So that's one space I think that we need to consider as a parent and how we support. But becoming that nagging parent is not going to work. We can just know that for sure. Probably one thing that I would say, though, and would really say very loudly to parents of kids who do have dreams, and really this goes to all sports parents, is you need to be curious and you need to seek education. At Soccer Parenting, we believe that when parents seek education about how to support their child, that great things will happen. And I think that there hasn't been enough of a movement around parent education. And when parents are provided with education, they need to be more curious. I had this really interesting experience happen. I've talked about it a few times. Recently, as I was at the Liverpool Academy, and I had an opportunity to be in their training center when their academy boys were there. So there were younger boys there, and I was up in they have can imagine. It's this beautiful facility. And they have these grass pitches, and overlooking the grass pitches is a family room, is what they call it. So the first floor, I think, maybe has some like bathrooms and a snack room and some different meeting spaces. And then the second floor overlooks the fields. The parents can sit up there in the bad weather of Liverpool and watch their child train. And so I was up there and interacting with some parents, kind of serving them I was not there working for Liverpool. I was there because a friend of mine is an academy coach there. So I was just casually in conversation with them. And when I asked parents, what would you like to learn more about? They had nothing to say. And I just find this very interesting, but this is a very common theme because we're so used to not being resourced as a sports parent that we actually don't think about, well, what do I need to learn about? Where are my gaps in education? What don't I know about? Or I will say when I founded Soccer Parenting, despite my background as a player and as a coach and coach educator at that point, I didn't know what functional movement skills were. I didn't know what holistic development meant. There were so many things that I know now that I think is really important for all parents to know. And this is what we're talking about, why my optimism is like we have this movement around better education, and parents are a tangent to the education that coaches and club leaders and this improvement that we're seeing in the way that we're providing sports to children. Parents are now part of that. But I would say if you have a child that has big dreams, that really loves their sports experiences, and you want them to, regardless of where they end up, to just learn some great life lessons and have some wonderful experiences, that you really need to seek education about how you can show up as the best sports parent possible.
Yes, great. So are there any specific tips, tools, or questions you found that consistently worked well with sports families? Ooh, that's a big one.
Um, hmm. So I guess that maybe we'll go back to the question of, is your child leading the way?
Yeah.
And what does that mean? And I think that that's always a good question for as parents for us to ask. I also would say that there's a lot of reflection that's required for us as sports parents. Surprising amount. If we want to improve the way that we're showing up during game days and match days in terms of our sideline behavior, that requires reflection about how we're feeling and the way we are showing up, and if we're proud of that, or how things could get better, and wonder why I'm feeling so much emotion, or I wonder why I'm getting so frustrated, or whatever that might be. So there is this constant sense of reflection and questioning that I think we need to be considering as sports parents. And then as our children are young and just getting involved in sport, there's reflection and questioning as a best practice around what is our aim for our child in sport? What was sports like for me and my experiences in sport, and how do those experiences maybe translate into my expectations, my hopes, my dreams for my child? And is that reasonable? And is that okay? Or what were my experiences with coaches growing up? And how does that translate into what I want for my child? So, yeah, I think there's a lot of reflection that, that's just being a parent, right? I mean, there's so many moments of, am I doing this right? Is everything going to be okay? Are they going to survive this world? Am I making things worse? So many opportunities that we have to think things like that as a parent. As a sports parent, I think those moments are quite oftentimes even amplified. Yeah.
Yep. Skye, we like to wrap things up with four questions that we ask all our guests. Our first question is, what is one do for parents of youth athletes?
Seek education.
Yep. And what is one don't for parents of youth athletes?
Mm, um, I'm trying to think of a really polite, respectful way to say this.
Yeah.
Maybe don't assume that you're is important to the experience as as you really are. It's your child that needs to be front and center.
Cool. What is one do for youth athletes aspiring to go further in their chosen sport?
Mm. Um, how about we go with kind of where we started this conversation? Be brave.
Yep. Yep. And one don't?
Blame other people. Yeah.
Cool. What's one book, tool, or resource? We're going to talk about yours, but what's one
Mhm.
book, tool, or resource that is not yours that you would recommend for parents and or youth athletes?
I'm a really big fan of Dr. Jerry Lynch. So any of Jerry's books are front and center for me. He's written like 25 books. One that stands out, he's written a book specifically about sports parenting. I can't think of the name of it right now, but anything by Dr. Jerry Lynch.
Very lunch. Put his name down. Awesome. Um, and yeah, lastly, where can people learn more about what you do and all the resources and yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So my website is soccerparenting.com. Our all sport brand for other sports is thesidelineproject.com. So at either of those websites, you'll be able to learn a lot more about the work that we're doing. We do have an education platform for youth soccer, football parents. We have a number of parents at New South Wales that are part of our membership site right now. So it's an education platform specifically for you soccer parents. Lots of resources and supports for parents there. And you can always find me on social media at Soccer Parenting. Our DMs are open, so we welcome conversation, questions, curiosities. We're always here to help.
Cool. Skye, thank you so much for joining us today. I know Ben is absolutely gutted that he couldn't be here. We will put all the links to your social media and websites and stuff in the description for the podcast and in the YouTube. But yeah, Skye, thank you. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Yes, it has been a pleasure. I appreciate it.